We're coming up on May 1st, the day for the traditional worker strikes and mass actions all around the world. Obviously, the virus and the necessary lockdowns change everything, but groups of workers in New York City are responding to the challenge. I'll be speaking to Seth Rosenberg, a New York City train operator and shop steward with Local 100 Transport Workers Union AFL-CIO, also Local 100 Fight Back, League for the Revolutionary Party, and we'll be talking about the planned action and about conditions on the subways today. Good evening, Seth.
Good evening. How are you doing tonight?
All right. Let's start with the action. What are people calling for in that coalition for Mayday?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on. I'm glad that the call for New York City is a flexible call because there's a lot of different workers in a lot of different situations, and so a call that gives different sets of workers the flexibility to sort of try and take action together based on, concretely what's going on with them on the ground, I think is the right way to go. And that's something I push for. So, there are a couple of main things going on. I think one of the big things is Amazon workers have been in the news a lot lately. Chris Smalls led his protest and ended up getting fired for it, and that lit a fire under him and a lot of other Amazon workers. And so one of the big things going on is the protest walkout at the Amazon. I think they call it the JFK. They have lots of different names for their different locations that I don't know about, but it's at 11:30 on Friday, and that's at 546 Gulf Avenue on Staten Island. Mm-hmm. And Amazon workers aren't unionized, and so transit workers like myself want to stand in solidarity with them. And so, we are bound by the Taylor law. We can't just walk off our jobs without facing, criminal, or legal action under the Taylor law for breaking the law. To be honest, transit workers right now are still recovering from a little bit of shock, given that we were pretty much what I can tell the hardest hit workers in New York City, certainly among them with infection and death rates, which we can talk about if you want. So we're really working on the ground. Our union hasn't done much, but we're, activists on the ground are sort of trying to regroup and fight for our basic PPE and safety conditions and social distancing and all that. But one of the things, we have a small coalition, Local 100 Fight Back, is we've really been pushing to reach out to other groups of essential workers who are oppressed and facing similar safety conditions. So we were glad to make contact with nurses like Sarah Dowd and Trey Kwan, and also Amazon workers or former Amazon worker Chris Smalls, and we've really, gotten into some great conversations with respect to providing support for each other. So one of the big things that I've been doing as a transit worker is trying to inform other transit workers about what's going on Mayday, and to support Amazon workers who are, able to take and willing to take right now that militant action that can really light the spark for the rest of us. So I've been working very hard to try and, get people, we've endorsed Chris Small's protest. We're co-signers on another Mayday coalition that's going to do Caravans, and also pushing for, I think, action at Governor Cuomo's office.
When you say caravans, you mean a car caravan?
Yeah, car caravans. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
That's the sort of the substitute protests.
Right. Up here in Connecticut, we call them honkathons.
Honkathons. Okay, I'd never heard that. New York City often is one regular day is one big honkathon.
So these car caravans will go where?
Well, I think they're coming from a lot of different places. From what I've heard, there's hopefully going to be one that starts all the way up in the Bronx and works its way down to the Amazon protest in Staten Island. And then I think hopefully there's going to be one from Staten Island that goes to Governor Cuomo's office, which is, if I have it right in front of me, it's in New York City. The office is 633 3rd Avenue. And then there's talk after that about going to Jeff Bezos's new luxury apartment, but I don't have a location on that yet. But that's, a lot of this is stuff that's that in conversations has been popped up. And so that's the information I have right now. But you can check, there's a number of different, if you type in Mayday, New York City, or General Strike, New York, a lot of, a lot of people are using the term General Strike. I may not necessarily agree with that for accuracy and for other reasons right now, but if you type in General Strike New York City or Mayday, you'll find New York City, you'll find these pages that'll give you information with respect to exactly where people are meeting and what they're doing. There's a lot of different stuff being planned.
And your own Facebook Local 100 Fight Back, I assume, would have as much information as you guys get.
Yeah. We posted the Amazon protest, and we've also posted, as we're co-signers on the Mayday Actions for Our Lives, that you can link to that as well. That's another one. NYC Mayday Actions for Our Lives is another one of the coalitions that's been doing hard work to plan stuff for Mayday. So, but yeah, if you go to Local 100 Fight Back, the page, not the group. If you go to the page, you'll find, if you scroll down, you'll find a lot of different links for different things going on.
Right. Now I understand that for those who are just sort of quarantined at home, or way far away, that there's an idea of wearing red. Can you explain that?
Yeah. Well, for me at least, I can explain it from my position. Is that Mayday is International Workers' Day, and traditionally red, the red flag for leftist, socialist, radical action, and for the working class. And so there may be other, there's a lot of organizing going on very quickly. And as a transit worker, I was out for a while, and I just got back to work this week. So, but so people may have other. I don't know if the Amazon workers or the healthcare workers, but I know that trying to be flexible, giving people a way to participate in different ways is, one thing was wearing the color red. And so for me, that has a particular meaning on May Day. But others in the coalition may have other specific things as well. And one thing that's important to point out with respect to this coalition, one of the things I'm proud about it is that it's really trying to focus on all the different ways that working and oppressed people are really being hammered by this pandemic, and how the Wall Street and the banks are getting bailed out, but we're getting affected in many ways. So not only does it call for, PPE and safe working conditions for essential workers, which I really appreciate, it also calls for, pushing the national debate for the economies to stay closed until it's safe and according to science. And then also, some of our most targeted people are people in prison and people, undocumented people and workers in detention facilities. The virus is spreading through like that, and we need to get them relief. A lot of people should be released, and then fighting for testing, fighting for a universal basic income while the banks get bailed out, and fighting for rent freezes and for forgiveness. People shouldn't have to be paying their rents and mortgages during this time. If billions and trillions of dollars are going to bail out Wall Street and the banks after they made untold trillions during the boom times where most of us got left behind, then everyday people, working people, poor people should get enough to get through. They should have the food, the medicine, the education, the housing that they need during this time. It's not like
today, shows it more than anything that the economy has gone down in its productive capacity 4.8%. They're thinking 30 million will be unemployed very shortly, and the stock market went up like a rocket today. So they know they're going to be taken care of.
Yeah. They, and that the bailouts have shown that, and it's just an intensification after the '08 crisis, where we saw the banks got bailed out, and yet people of color lost their homes in these subprime mortgages at record rate. I think it was they talked about it was the most massive in '08, the most massive transfer of wealth and property
Right.
from people of color in the nation's history.
So let's talk about subways now.
Okay.
I want to get into that because you're a train operator now. Explain to me, is that like a train engineer or is it different?
Yeah. So the subways, we're only inside New York City. We don't fall under the Railroad Act. So we're not considered a railroad. Unlike some of the, Metro North or Long Island Railroad, which go from the city out into other areas. And so we're considered a subway, and they work very hard to not consider us a railroad because the railroads actually under that act have the power to strike, and we don't. And so I'm considered a subway operator. The subways in New York City, not all of them. There's always an exception. Whatever rule you say in the subways, there's always an exception. But most subways are two-person teams with a train operator in front and then a conductor, usually in the middle. The train operator operates the train, forward and stopping and so forth,
right.
Navigating the signal system and all that. And the conductor opens and closes the doors and is responsible for the announcements.
So how long have you been an operator?
Yeah, so I've been a train operator just over 13 years, and then I was a conductor for a year before that. So it's been about 14 years in the system, but 13 as a train operator. Oh,
so you're a real veteran. So, all right, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We have people with high seniority, so I would probably consider to be a older rookie.
Okay, now I'm in Connecticut, so my last experience with the subway, it was so packed. I was on 42nd Street. I couldn't even get in the car. I had to wait for the next train. I assume it's not like that now.
No, it's been interesting. I'll give you the short story. I think the short story is that regardless of what our governor or Chairman Foy or interim President Feinberg of NYCT, Foy is the chairman of the MTA, regardless of what they say, the numbers do not lie. And what happened is that COVID-19 hit New York City and spread through the subway system, and the MTA was unprepared, did not put their pandemic plan into place, and left transit workers virtually unprotected without even the most basic safety measures. Everything for example, they started to say that they were sanitizing the trains where the passengers sit every 72 hours. With COVID-19, 72 hours is a lifetime. It's, you're going to spread it to so many people during that time. That's just an example. So they say they did something, but in the end, and the number, as I said, the numbers don't lie. We got sick in record numbers, and transit workers died by the dozens.
How many have died? Do you have an estimate of that?
Well, so we have transit workers who are keeping and trying to verify people and keep an accurate track. I was just actually, you and I were discussing that Local 100 Fight Back just did a live stream, and one of the people from buses who's doing that, Danny Cruz, is one of the 3 people who's keeping track of the numbers. And I think he said it's around 100 right now, and that includes, I'm not one of the people doing it, but it does include. I think that may be active people, but that may also include people from Local 100s. It may include ATU and TWU and the supervisor union, because we lost a significant number of supervisors as well. And then people from some of the private bus and school bus routes. But the numbers, I think, among New York City transit workers who are active, I believe now it's in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So, and we just lost a conductor who a lot of us knew very well, Ben Schaefer. He was a union activist, and he had been an officer. And I'm Jewish and he's Jewish. We had many conversations together.
Mm.
Didn't agree on everything, but yeah, we knew he was on a ventilator for a couple of days, and we just found out today that he passed. And a lot of people, he knew a lot of people, and a lot of people liked him. And,
Yeah, that's awful.
Yeah.
What kind of equipment is the MTA giving you now?
Well, it depends. So we are supposed to get one N95 mask a week, and we are supposed to be careful with it and put it in a bag and clean it every day. And then we're supposed to get a certain number of wipes a week. We're supposed to get a pair of like vinyl gloves every day. They've got tons, most of the time, of that goopy hand sanitizer made by New York State. I think it's made by prison labor. At least that's what I've heard. So, I've been able to get my position from the beginning. I wrote a letter to the union after speaking to my superintendent on March 17th, was that, the way the trains work is that you take it up to one end, you get off, someone gets on the other end and gets on in the middle, on the flip side, and then they take the train back. And so you have people using it's like using the same desk. Someone uses a desk for about an hour or an hour and a half, they get up, then someone else sits down on that desk, right? And so if that was the case, if that was in an office and the coronavirus was spreading, you'd think, well, you probably want to spray and wipe down that desk every time someone new uses it, right? That was my demand, and that demand was met with both from my union and from the MTA with silence. And to me, that's one of the main reasons that it spread through our workforce, along with no social distancing plan. So, I think the rule is we're only supposed to get like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 wipes a week. But for me, I'm, to be safe, I'm requesting or taking wipes in order to wipe down my position. I try to use, so we have, our controllers to move the train forward and then the buttons, and our circuit breakers and our seat and our window handles and our door handles. And so I try to wipe those down every time I get on a train. I don't know who was on the train before. I don't know if they sneeze. And they're probably, in the last 24 hours, there's been probably 15 or 20 people in that, touching that same stuff.
Wow, 15 people in that little area where you drive the train.
Obviously not at the same time, but
rotating
in and out.
Yeah, rotating.
Right, and so to me, to keep myself safe, everything I'm gonna touch in there, I'm gonna wipe down, right? And I think if we had done that from the beginning, if they had been proactive and given us the supplies to do that, a lot less of us would have gotten sick and died.
Yeah, that's something. Now, in terms of passengers, I read something, I think today, that said passengers were 90% down.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was that was where you wanted to go with that, right? So basically, they didn't provide us the basic safety stuff. I warned my superintendent and warned the union that our workforce is going to get sick in record numbers, and that's exactly what happened. It spread through transit unlike anyone else, faster than any other group. There were days in the peak there when it was tripling every 2 days. And so what happened is that workers got sick. We couldn't go to work. And then not only that, but there's a ripple effect because people got quarantined. Now, the MTA, I have to tell you, has not been consistent with respect to telling people that they've come into contact with people who have tested positive. Now, they have to some degree, but then I had no other people, constant reports, people saying, this person tested positive. They told me, but the MTA didn't tell me they tested positive, and I was with them a bunch. So people have been getting self-quarantining as well, getting, if they've showed symptoms, they've gotten notes from their doctor, or if they've tested positive, they've been quarantined. And the MTA has quarantined some people, and that led to a ripple effect where so many people were out of work that the MTA couldn't run service, right? And that happened, I think, what was that, towards the end of March? I believe it was towards the end of March. I don't know the exact date. It's all been all blur. But what happened then is the MTA was forced because of their own lack of proactiveness and the effect it had on our workers they just didn't have enough workers to run service, and they had to They had to shut down the sub, which basically say only essential workers can ride the subway, right? And that went along with the shutdown. And so they curtailed service, right, for a long while. They were running only on a Saturday schedule, which is much reduced, and the number of people riding went down as well. But the problem is when you're running less trains and you've got less people riding, then but if you're running less trains, then the trains can still be crowded. For the most part, I've only been back a couple of days, and I'm working on the G line, which is the one line that doesn't go, the major line that it doesn't go to Manhattan. It just goes between Brooklyn and Queens. We call it the crosstown. And overall, things have been pretty light. On my last run, which gets close to leaving Queens around like 4 something, I think. It is a little bit more crowded, but it's. Then let me just say one thing, which I'd like to get in, which is that I confronted Chairman Foy on the Brian Lehrer show on WNYC in March. Well, one of the things that I feel strongly that we need is for the train cars that have the conductor and the train operators in them to be closed off so they don't have any passengers, because the air circulates, and the air circulates from the cars into our cabs, and there is some fresh air, but most of it comes from that. And he simply said that they couldn't do that because then people would be crammed too much into the cars that were remaining. And I hear him on that. That's why we proposed a plan to the Transit Authority right around the end of March, early April, that said what you really need to do is you need to close the system to everyone except credentialed workers, essential workers who have some sort of verification, and either only let them into the system, and everyone else needs to be out. And there's been no response about that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, but ridership is down, but the number of trains running is down because of the MTAs, as again, basically almost using us. Well, the MTA not doing what's the basic necessary safety measures and letting the virus run through our workforce like wildfire.
Now, there was pictures in the Daily News, I think it was yesterday, of the homeless people sleeping. It looked like some taking over whole cars, sleeping, laying on the floor, or the whole seats and stuff. And then today there was some measure taken. I mean, I know people have to be sympathetic to the homeless, but it does not seem like a good thing at all.
Yeah, it's this is I'm a socialist, and one of the things I'm proud about with respect to the Local 100 Fight Back Coalition is we're socialists, radicals, progressives, and transit workers are getting very angry about the problem, the situation with the homeless, and we have a right to be angry. It's dangerous right now, but the thing that I've been arguing or discussing it with some transit workers online. There's a lot of discussion about it on Facebook, and I have consistently argued. I said the homeless. Just a little aside. I've always, like when a train. Sometimes when you get to on the G line, when the train gets to the end of the line at Church Avenue, you have to get everyone off so the train can go into a relay track and come back out. And normally passengers aren't allowed on during that time. And I've always have been. I found that homeless people sometimes are on the train, sometimes they're intoxicated, sometimes they're sleeping, and they it's hard to get them moved. And a lot of people see that, get frustrated with that, and I have as well. But over the past couple of years, I've tried to change my attitude, and I've tried to treat them with respect, and refer them with respect, ask nicely, explain the situation, and say, I'm really sorry to have to ask you to do this, but we need to move the train to this place, and we can't have anyone on. And I found overall 99% of the times it's extremely successful when you treat someone with kindness and respect, that they're more likely to listen to you and to hear what you have to say. And I think the same thing goes with the homeless in this situation. I've consistently argued that I think the system needs to be closed down for a period of time and cleaned, and essential workers need to get to work and housed in different ways. And I think our society can figure out ways to do that. There's tons of rental cars, but we can come back to that. But with respect to the homeless, I think everyone needs to be removed from the system, including the homeless, not singling them out. The system needs to be shut down. And, you know, New York City is a tourist city. There's tons of hotel rooms that are
I was
empty.
just going to bring that up.
Right. The hotel rooms can be requisitioned and used. This is a crisis where people's public health and people's lives are at risk. And so they should be put into hotel rooms where they are given food and the medical care that they need and any psychological services that they need and any other services that they need, right? It's all hands on deck for this crisis, right? But both the essential worker problem and the homeless problem show that this is bigger than the MTA, and the borders between public and private property need to be pushed aside so that everyone can be kept safe. You can't deal with this problem just with the MTA. You can't just kick homeless people out on the street. That creates another health problem, right? But if you can access this private property and demand that these business owners, if they want society to be saved and they want things to become safe and to be reopened, if their property has to be used for the greater good.
Mm-hmm, right. Well, my last question is about Local 100 Fight Back. If you could just talk a bit about that, and then we could wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah. We are a small but growing progressive coalition within Local 100. We've run for union office. We're made up of socialists, progressives, radicals, and I think I'm very proud of the work that we've done on a number of different things, especially during this crisis. I think to politically get your head around this crisis and orient to it strategically, you have to have a full and wide working class perspective. And so we have done work both with respect to trying to organize our own workers, but also we were the first to really try and connect and show transit workers that there are other workers out there fighting and that we can fight alongside them. So my friend and comrade and co-founder of Local 100 Fight Back, John Ferretti, he's a conductor. He has been pushing for a long time to do live streams, video interviews and things like that. And this, now we're in the Zoom times and all that. And so this was sort of a catalyst. And so as we started, we started with transit workers, but then because we're socialists, we know other workers. We know other socialists who are nurses and who are transit workers in Chicago and things like that. And we started to have, conference calls where we would all talk to each other. And then we're like, hey, let's get them on and let them talk to transit workers and let transit workers find out what those issues are going on.
Very
so we've
good.
been we've been spearheading that. And I'm really proud of that work that we've been doing because I'm a strong believer in working class solidarity. And that given the economic crisis that's coming, and as we were saying, they're going to make working people, they're going to try and make working people pay for it. They're going to try and reopen union contracts. They're going to try and, institute austerity measures, take away workplace safety, try and lower wages, weaken healthcare, all those things. That we need a united fight against those attacks that are coming and a fight for safety that a lot of us don't have right now. And if we can connect to nurses and transit workers across the country and to Amazon workers and Instacart workers and Target workers who are really taking those workers are really taking the lead right now. They're facing some of the worst brunt. Then we're going to be stronger down the road, and it can spark my transit workers into, if they can see other workers taking action to defend themselves, then, right now a lot of us are shell-shocked and people are, but if they can see people doing that, then they can say, hey, I can stand up and do that too.
Now, if people want to connect with you, do you have a Gmail?
Say again?
If people want to connect with Local 100 Fight Back, do you have a Gmail?
Yes. So if you want to email us, it's local100fightback@gmail.com. You can also check out our Facebook page, which is Local 100 Fight Back. It's the page, not the group. And we're always looking for people. We're always looking to make connections with other workers and support other workers in struggle.
Thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you. It's good to talk to you.